Welcome back to another episode of The Close-Up, a part of the Orlando Magic HQ Network. I'm your host, Stephen Cameron, and today we got a great episode. We got Brandon Kravitz, 96.9 The Game, Orlando Magic broadcast partner. He joins the show, and we have a great conversation about the team. We recorded this on Monday, January 13th. The Magic beat the Philadelphia 76ers last night, 104-99. We talk a little bit about that game, but mostly we talk about the team in general, a little bit more of a higher level. But that was a fun game. You know, it was tough. The Magic really only had about 8 available players after Tristan da Silva went out with illness. He's dealing with a sickness right now. I know there's like a flu stomach bug going around the entire NBA, so he might be dealing with that. He played 1 minute. He came out about 1 minute and like 10, 11 seconds. And then, you know, he kind of like signaled over to the bench. He's like, I can't go right now. So they only had like 8 available players. Paulo was back again for his second game, had a great night. You can tell he's still figuring some things out. He only took 8 shot attempts, but he still put up 20 points, got to the free throw line 11 times, went 9 of 11 from three, or from the free throw line, went 1 of 2 from 3, 5 of 8 from field goals. He's had 8 rebounds, 2 of them offensive rebounds, 6 assists, a block. He did have some high turnovers. He had 6 turnovers, which was not great, but, you know, guys are still figuring things out. He's still shaking the rust off. I don't expect that to be the norm for him, particularly as his team gets healthier and guys are in their positions a little bit better offensively, having some better offensive options out there. Some of those passes, maybe a person wasn't in the position he thought they were in, so maybe that was easier for a defender to pick off a pass or something like that. So I'd have to go back and exactly look at all the turnovers, which I haven't exactly done, just to be honest. I watched the game live and then, you know, telling you what I feel like I'm remembering. But, yeah, he had another really positive game there. Another pretty good game for Cole Anthony. Good. I mean, great game. He had 27 points, team high. He went 11 for 17. He had 4 assists, 2 turnovers, couple of rebounds, 3 rebounds. But offensively, that first half, he's ended the first half, I think, with 20 points. He was just a bucket. He was getting anything he wanted, hitting big threes, having some really nice aggressive drives to the rim constantly. He was doing it all, and it was just a lot of fun to watch. It's like, wow, how do we get this Cole every game? Because if he's playing like that every game, this team has a much better chance of winning games when you have this version of Cole Anthony than the other version of Cole Anthony, which we know can be much harder to watch, inconsistent with his shooting, turnover prone, things like that. So I really enjoyed watching Cole last night. Also, Jonathan Isaac, he's starting to find himself. He had a pretty good game last night. He had 5 offensive rebounds, 11 rebounds total, 2 blocks, 20 points, went 50% from the 3-point line, shooting 2 of 4, 8 of 13 in general field goals. It was just a really good game for Jonathan Isaac. It's good to see him starting to get these more visually impressive games because, as you heard from me last week and kind of this whole season, he's really kind of had an up and down season. Like, I wouldn't necessarily say he's been a negative to the Magic, but he hasn't been that like defensive monster. He's just kind of been okay. And offensively, he definitely has not been good this year. He's had a couple of good games, this being one of them. So it's good to see him kind of back in action there, you know, finding himself offensively, being confident from the 3-point line, being confident in the paint, just being a threat, which is what you want from Jonathan Isaac. Don't expect him to be having 20 points a game. But if he could give you a consistent, 10 to 12 off the bench with putbacks, hitting a couple threes, that would be phenomenal. Another person I really want to shout out is Anthony Black. He had a mixed game last night, but overall he was a positive. He had 17 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists, played really good defense, had a couple of steals. I know there was times where you'd see him driving to the basket aggressively and just not making those drives, not converting them into points. But I love that he was driving despite the shot not going in with his layups or his attacks. And then obviously he did enough to get 17 points. He went 7 of 18. So like I said, there was definitely some moments where it's like, ooh, you could have finished that better. Or it was just a really tough finish in general that almost anyone would have had a hard time doing. But it's great to see the aggression there with him just being aggressive and attacking the basket. So really happy there. We're hoping that by the next game, we can have Kentavious Caldwell-Pope back. He was probable, then got downgraded to questionable, and then eventually out. So with him being fairly close to playing last game, I'm hoping that by Wednesday, having a couple extra days off, allow him to be back on the court. Like I mentioned, Tristan Da Silva is dealing with an illness. We hope after a couple of days he can come back. We know Jalen Suggs hopefully should be back sooner than later. He's been spending a lot of time resting, getting his back right. Coach Mosley talked a little bit about that on why he hasn't been with the team on the bench. They just say it's not conducive for him to be sitting for that long for his recovery time, and there's better ways he can be utilizing and recovering his body than just sitting on the bench, which will get him back to the court faster. So he did mention he's been getting up and down the court a bit more. Hasn't gone through contact yet, but, making steps to coming back. So yeah, we're hoping to get a few more bodies back with this Magic roster. They have a rough schedule coming up. These next 3 games are big. They have, let me pull it up. They have Milwaukee on Wednesday in Milwaukee. They have an ESPN game in Boston on Friday. Then Sunday at home versus Denver. 3 big games coming up to end this week. I hope they can win 1 for sure. 2 would be great. I personally don't expect them to win all 3. That's a really hard schedule, just kind of not realistic for them to win all 3 in my opinion, but 1 would be solid. Don't go 0-3. 2 would be phenomenal. Great outcome in my opinion. Before we get into the conversation with Brandon Kravitz, just want to give a shout out to a couple of our sponsors. BetOnline continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number 1 source for online betting in 2025. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, BetOnline is your ultimate game day companion. With the largest selection of odds on everything from football, the NBA, college basketball to NHL and UFC, BetOnline is the number 1 sports betting source for the new year. From touchdowns to three-pointers and hat tricks, BetOnline has you covered on every game, every play, and every win. BetOnline, the game starts here. And this is funny because I'm about to read an ad read for our guest who was on the show today. Magic fans, listen up. Orlando Magic Radio Network pregame and postgame host Brandon Kravitz is live daily on 96.9 The Game with those within the zone starting at 3:30 p.m. on Magic Game Days. He stretches that show all the way to 6:30 with the final 30 minutes being completely Magic focused. It's a great show. Tap in, people. What bonus content? Check out the Zoneheads podcast for your weekly on-demand episodes. He covers all the Orlando Magic or all the sports in Orlando, including Orlando Magic. He does sports gambling. He does all sorts of fun things. So tune into our good friend, Brandon Kravitz. Last but not least, please, if you haven't already done so, like and subscribe to this channel. Find us on our social media platforms at Orlando Magic HQ. And if you are interested in supporting us on a bigger way, check out our Patreon program. We have a couple of tiers where you can join financially, and that just pretty much goes back into the show, back into the fans. We do giveaways. We do all sorts of things with that extra added revenue. It really helps us, and we do a ton of exclusive content just for you. There's a lot of really good benefits, including like discounts on home game tickets. So check out the Patreon program. The links to that are in the description. Without further ado, here's our conversation with Brandon Kravitz of 96.9 The Game and Orlando Magic. Like I said, everyone, in the intro, we got Brandon Kravitz of 96.9 The Game and the Orlando Magic. He's on the broadcast team. Brandon Kravitz, what's going on? What's going on with you, man? How you doing today?
I'm doing great. I parked myself in a room at the iHeart Castle over here so I could cut away and chat with you. And just based on recent results, it's a good day to be a Magic fan.
It is a good day to be a Magic fan. You know, we're recording this on Monday, January 19th in the morning. The Magic just beat the Philadelphia 76ers. We got Paulo Bencaro back for a couple of games now. Things, despite some injuries, things are still looking optimistic because at least we have the king back. We have the man himself, Paolo. Before we get too into that, Brandon, this injury has been filled with injuries. Or this season has been filled with injuries. We know that. You know, Paulo was out for 34 games. Franz has been out for like a month and a half. Jalen Suggs has been out for a few weeks. Gary Harris can't stay healthy for more than a day. Tristan Da Silva's sick. Caldwell Pope's got a banged up knee. Caleb Houston. Goga just hurt himself somehow. It's like a hip or knee or something. Jet Howard's got a rolled ankle. The Magic literally had 8 available guys yesterday once Tristan Da Silva went out. But before we get into like that, my real question is, you're a broadcaster, I want to look at this from a different perspective. You're a broadcaster, you cover the team with the Orlando Magic on the radio, as well as the local broadcast or like local sports radio on 96.9 The Game and iHeartRadio. When you're dealing with a season like this, right? We all come into the season with high expectations, two stars playing. Even when Paulo goes down, we got Franz and Suggs playing at pretty high levels, but things just kept hitting and hitting and hitting. What are some of the challenges as a broadcaster that maybe the public don't necessarily think or realize that you have to go through when it comes to covering a team in a stretch like this?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would start with the struggle of it, and then I think the rest of my answer may surprise you. But the difficult part for me, I host the pregame show, I do the halftime show, and the postgame show on the Orlando Magic radio network. Halftime and postgame take care of themselves. There's not a lot of prep that goes into it. You are just live reacting to what happens in front of you. So all of those two elements pretty much stay static throughout the course of the year. It's very game dependent. Pre-game, I'm in storytelling mode. I'm in the storylines business. And I also am in the update you on the latest news and developments with the team business.
Fair.
That's the negative part of it, is trying to keep up with all of this stuff. Who's in, who's out. Every NBA team is like this. The Magic are no different. They hold a lot of this information out as long as humanly possible, even for us on the broadcast side. So just figuring out what the storyline is going to be based on who is and who is not available can be a struggle. The Philadelphia 76ers on the other side were a good example of this. Hard to write a pregame monologue about the 76ers that doesn't involve Joel Embiid if he plays, but it's foolish to put him in there if he's not. It's not much of a preview. Hey, here comes Joel Embiid. This is what he offers. Oh, by the way, none of that matters because he's not playing. That is the difficult part. And the Magic have been dealing with that on a variety of different levels, from the Paolo Franz level down to the Jet Howard level. That's the struggle. But honestly, I go back to what I just said. I'm in the storyline business. And if you're winning, you're interesting. And if you're banged up, you're interesting. There are storylines that have developed. These basically write themselves every single game. Who's in, who's out, whose new opportunity is it? Can Franz step up without Paolo? Okay, now Franz is out. What does it look like when it's Jalen Suggs' team? So not that you cheer for this stuff at all. I like it when all of the players are available and healthy, but being in the storyline business, the stories have just kind of been low-hanging fruit with all of these injuries because it's about who's had the ability to step up. And so I would say it's not as much of a challenge. It's just unfortunate that it's happening.
I imagine that this year compared to years past is a little bit easier to an extent. And I'm not going to say easier, just probably easier to stay emotionally positive about it all because the Magic have stayed a top 4 seed in the East, where in years past when the injuries piled up, they dropped pretty far down in the standings. And, they're, I guess I'm going to say like they're, the optimism, is different, right? Because it's like, there's just less hope, where now it's like the team is top 4. Their defense identity hasn't changed. It's still the same. They've been able to stay in enough games to where it's like, I'm not talking about a team fighting for the play-in spot in 10th because of all the injuries. We're talking about a team that's still, fighting for home court advantage in the seeding standings, despite having all these injuries. So I imagine that's probably just helped spirits a little bit with you, right?
Oh, for sure. I think I would have a completely different tone about all of these injuries. And I am talking about it as somebody who hosts a pregame show and does a live radio show 5 days a week. Not coming to you from the fan portion of my brain that just doesn't want to see any of this. Sure. I'm strictly talking about storyline perspective. But yeah, those storylines, it's a lot easier to go on Orlando Magic branded radio and tell these positive stories about opportunities and guys stepping up when they're doing exactly that. If they were losing, it would be really, really difficult to paint that sort of picture. But you can silver lining this stuff left and right based on recent results. If I had told you at the start of the season, we're midway through January and the Magic are in a 4-5 battle right now with the Milwaukee Bucks, I didn't tell you anything else about what happened this season. Do you think most Magic fans would sign up for that?
Yeah, I mean, we'd all be absolutely thrilled.
Okay. Now, if I told you before the season, I'm not going to tell you what seed you're fighting for. We're in the middle of January, and Paolo missed 34 games. Franz is on the shelf for multiple months, and Jalen Suggs is in and out of the lineup with injuries. Now, where do you think they are in the standings?
Maybe a lot like a play-in team.
Well,
Maybe.
there you go. And then
Yeah,
that, I mean,
yeah.
and so now we'll bring you fast forward back to reality, which is both of those things are true. The Magic are fighting for that 4-5, and all of those guys have missed time. It's amazing what this team has been able to accomplish. And, you know, I'll jump ahead here because I think this all goes to Coach Mosley. This is coaching, and more coaching. Him, his staff, they have done incredible work to have whoever is out there ready to go. They're on like their 16th starting lineup of the season. Do you think Jamahl Mosley ever had it in his mind that he was going to have meaningful minutes allocated to Trevelin Queen this year? Absolutely not. And that's nothing against Trev. He's a nice player for what he does, but he's not part of their NBA plans. And he's out there in closing lineups again and again and again. It's incredible what he has done. And this is the homer in me perhaps, but I also think it's accurate. I don't think there's another team in the NBA that could withstand what the Magic have withstood and be where they are.
Well, we've seen it with other teams. I mean, like the New Orleans Pelicans have gone through, like the Magic, they went through a pretty historic run a little earlier in the season with a lot of their injuries. You know, they lost Dejounte Murray in game 1 with a broken hand. Zion was out pretty quickly. Brandon Ingram missed time. They had a ton of injuries too, but they dropped. They won like 5 games. They're I don't know exactly where they are in the standings, so I don't have the entire East-West. Actually, I do have it. Let me check. They've won 8 games this year, you know? And so it's like we've seen other teams go through it, but you're right. I don't think there's many other teams that can do that. And I think, like you said, you know, it goes back to Coach Mosley and the identity that he's helped build with this team, but I also think it goes back to the front office with the types of players they bring into this team for Coach Mosley to work with. That sometimes we all get frustrated with let's get some offense in here. Like, why are we only focusing on defensive players? Well, we see it's a lot easier to plug and play a defensive minded player than maybe someone who cannot defend at a high level, and can maybe get you buckets. But if you're leaking out points on the other end, you know, it's really how far. I think what I'm trying to say, and I'm processing this as I'm saying it, it's probably a lot easier to find high level NBA players that might not be able to score, like Trevelin Queen, to throw in a 2-way or 15, 16 man spot than it is to find a high level NBA scorer that's not going to be a huge defensive liability. And that's probably why we're seeing a guy like Trevelin Queen get that 2-way roster spot, right?
Or is it harder to find those guys, and that's why the Magic prioritize them so much, because it's difficult. Yeah. Nobody dreams of playing in the NBA so that they can play lockdown defense for 24 seconds or 23 seconds of the shot clock.
Unless you're Jonathan Isaac.
Well, yeah, he dreams of that. Jonathan Isaac dreams of 5-second violations for inbound passes. But for everybody else, they get into the league because they want to dunk on someone, they want to bomb threes, and they want to score 20-plus points a game. I think it's really hard to find players that are committed and have the ability and the stamina to lock in defensively for a full 48 or whatever their allotment is for that particular game. And when the Magic are really good at finding those guys, and they're really good at bringing them in. And to your point about, well, it's frustrating. Allow this moment in time to wash away any frustration, because you can only have so many turnstiles on defense and still be a top defensive team in the NBA. Defense travels. It's what's keeping this team afloat right now. They obviously don't have the 3-ball isn't there. And in the NBA, if you want to peel it back to make it as simple as possible, you are either making more threes than your opponent, or you are making the 3-ball incredibly difficult on your opponent. And right now the Magic are doing the latter of the two better than anybody in the NBA.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, they're they're back in the second best defensive rating in the league. They were third for the longest time. The Rockets were above them. They've now jumped the Rockets as of today. They are the second best defensive rating in the league at 107.2, which is just, it's insane, dude. It's insane to think about that. Question, when we're looking at this team and we're looking at all the injuries that are coming and have happened to this not coming, but that we're currently in.
Are you crystal balling this, Steven?
I'm trying not to. I'm just stumbling over my words. It's early. I'm still on my second cup of coffee. Like we're figuring it out over here. But when you see all these injuries happening, man, like how do you rationalize them in your head?
Yeah, I think that's tough.
It's hard. You know, I tend to just think they're all fluke injuries. You know, there's some fans out there that are like, yeah, you know, question the staff, blah, blah, blah. I'm not one of those people, and I tend to push back on those narratives. But like, how do you rationalize what's going on with this Magic roster? Because we all thought we were past it after we had some, you know, pretty good health last year, and maybe, you know, we'd be a little bit of a league average team. But once again, we're hitting like historic numbers of injuries to a roster.
And Magic fans have been blaming the staff for years. I think the thing that has to be understood, you have to at least layer in this context. Otherwise, you're just not doing that take justice. They have changed that staff over the last couple of years. This has been a complaint of Magic fans for as long as I've been on the radio. And yet the training staff has changed. It changed as recently as 2-3 years ago when Arnie Kander took over. He's a legend in the business. If we're saying that this guy can't figure out how to keep players healthy and that he's the reason why, then you're not going to find anybody better in the industry. That's not my opinion. That is NBA Circle's opinions. The Magic have one of the best performance and wellness chiefs of staff that you can possibly find. So I would put that to the side. If you still want to hold on to that thought that it's the staff's problem, at least state in your take that you are upset with the current staff that has been in place since 2023 and that this isn't a problem that goes back 20 years, because that's just simply not accurate. That's one of my biggest pet peeves with Magic fans, is that they blame this as sort of this in this umbrella way without understanding that this is still a new staff. That, first of all, they have kept Jonathan Isaac on the court. Okay, that by itself deserves praise and a medal, because this guy had he couldn't stay on the floor for more than 10 minutes. I tend to agree with you. I think some of it is fluky. I definitely don't blame the staff. It is weird, though, that you have two guys that went down with oblique injuries. That's like a pitcher's injury, and both of your stars went down with the same one. I don't know. I struggle with it. I sympathize with where you are and your coffee drinking experience for today, because I feel the same way when asked about this. I don't know how to rationalize it, because I understand wanting to blame somebody, and then it's compounding to the point where I think we're naive to say that it's a coincidence. So the truth lies somewhere in the middle, and I don't really know. I don't know what to make of that.
I think of it like, I mean, I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know what's going on behind closed doors. I don't see what's happening in practices and training. But I think, like, inherently, we as humans want something to blame, like a specific point.
For sure.
And that's why we go towards, like, trying to find someone or something to point it all at. When it's like, in reality, it's like, you can't control that Jet Howard landed funny and rolled his ankle. You can't control that Jalen Suggs plays one of the most physical brands of basketball and is constantly diving on the floor, and something happened with, you know, how he played to make his back seize up, and now he's going to need some time out for a little while. You know, you can't control how Goga landed or hit something in game the other day to like mess up his hip or knee. Same with Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. Like, so many of these things happen in games that are like, no matter how much training or stretching or whatever you want to do before a game and during practice, it's not going to prevent the physicality that happens and that these players play with on the court. The weird one was the obliques, especially back to back. You're like, that's where I did have some negative thoughts in my head. I don't think I ever really let them come to fruition, but I had them there for a little bit, you know? But it's like, and I hope after the second one, the training staff at least evaluated their processes, right? Not saying that they were doing anything wrong, but at least they looked back and said, are we doing something wrong? let's check some things out and just make sure we're not overstepping in one way or another. I imagine they would. I've interviewed Arnie Kander myself. He's a very, very thoughtful person, very processed person.
Yeah.
He's not going to do anything just because it feels like, he's going to make sure his staff are doing things at a very calculated reason and being and not overdoing it, right? It's silly to think it would be him, but I think he's also smart enough to let's evaluate our processes anyways. Like, I bet that's happening. Yeah,
they're a very physical basketball team too,
Yeah.
Steven. I think that that's a big part of it. I'm sure that if you went through the history of the NBA, the teams that played with the most physicality probably dealt with a few more injuries. So
Totally.
you have some of these that are fluky that just happen in the framework of the game that they play. And some, I think Suggs is the perfect example. His back seized up on him. Nothing was even happening. He was just running. I think he was taking a 2 steps to cover the ball and just hit the floor. That's a guy that just worked himself into the ground, and his back said, you need to take a break for a second. I think a lot of it has to do with their physicality. Some of it has to do with coincidence and bad luck. That's the best I can come up with.
And that's kind of how I think about it too, Oh yeah, and sorry, Tristan da Silva got sick. We're all human here, On the positive side, we kind of mentioned this earlier, Mosley, when you're looking at the coaching jobs that have been done out there, Kenny Atkinson, you have to tip the cap to him. He very well could win the award, and I wouldn't be upset if he did, because he's doing some historic things with that Cavs roster that many people thought needed major changes. No one thought, there's a lot of people questioning whether Jared Allen and Evan Mobley could live together, as bigs, if that was going to be enough. People were questioning the Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell fit, and yet he comes in and he's got them with 33 wins and 5 losses for the entire season, beating all the major teams and the Thunder and the Celtics. They're just destroying everyone, right? So I'd be remiss if I didn't mention him, but you got to think at the end of the year, if Coach Mosley isn't top 2 in voting, if not the winner of Coach of the Year, people have done it wrong. I love that we're hearing his name talked about this on a regular basis with the media. Whenever I'm hearing a podcast with ESPN or The Ringer and they talk about Coach of the Year, they talk about the winning coaches, but then they also talk about Mosley pretty quickly in the conversation. Mosley, Coach of the Year, right? He has to be, or at least up there.
I think he is. Personally, I am incredibly biased, so I'm willing to hear arguments. I think he's done a phenomenal job. If you just look at the biggest year-over-year improvement is Kenny Atkinson and what he's done with the Cleveland Cavaliers, but I think you have to layer in what's happened here. And Jamahl Mosley has had the deck stacked against him the entire season and has still found a way to overcome that and put the Magic right now, as we're chatting, in the 4th spot in the East. It's remarkable. There are other guys that deserve credit. Joe Mazzulla will never get the credit that he deserves because the Celtics are built to be as good as they are. Mark Daigneault won't win it again because he won it last year, and voters don't like to give it to the same guy twice. But what he's doing at OKC is phenomenal. And Ime Udoka with the Houston Rockets, you talk about major improvement, overplaying expectation. I think he deserves some credit. And then a guy that's deeper down the board, JB Bickerstaff with the Detroit Pistons. That team plays hard every single night. They were trash before he showed up, and they didn't make that many big roster moves to be as good as they are. I think a lot of that is coaching. So ironic that 2 of the guys on the list, JB Bickerstaff, coached the Cavs last year. Now they've seen a huge improvement with Kenny Atkinson, but JB is doing a good job with Detroit. It's the weird world of the NBA.
So
I think
weird.
if I was attacking this as unbiased as humanly possible, I would have Kenny Atkinson 1 and Jamahl Mosley 2, but I can't remove that bias. So I have Jamahl Mosley 1 and Atkinson 2.
It's funny because most awards are very narrative based, right? And then when it comes to this, they often just do biggest win jump, or the guy, or a team that's on a historic run, the Cavaliers are, and but then we look at MVP, it's always narrative based, not statistically based. I mean, there's a little bit of stats in there too. Most improved player, it's, they end up just giving it to some. Yeah, to not put narrative and story and context into the Mosley situation, why he should be number one, I agree, is just ridiculous. And like I'm thankful he's getting talked about within the coaching circles about this award, but I tend to agree. Like, he's had to do so much with so little, and he's done a phenomenal job keeping this team super competitive. 23-18 as we're recording this, 4th in the East. Ridiculous.
Yeah, and I would say don't get hung up on this. If he doesn't win, that's okay, because this award has been a death sentence over the years.
Yes. Maybe we don't want him to win. Come in second place, Mosley. Come in second place.
Exactly. You'd be happy for him if he finishes in first, but you should really want Mosley to finish in second place. Just historically, this does not end well.
Yeah, I agree. You get about 1.5 years until you're fired. So let's just keep him at second place. I'm fine with that. Positive news, we've positive with Mosley. He's done awesome. Let's bring in some more positive. We got Paulo back. That's been huge for this team. We saw him put up a monstrous game. I think it was 33 points versus the loss to who am I spacing on? The Milwaukee. And then, put up a nice, respectable 20-point game last night versus the 76ers. When you see him on the court, I think I could probably say some things that you're about to say, but I'm going to let you speak it. What are some of the biggest differences that you're seeing with Paulo playing on this court, despite this team being so injured, and just how he's affecting this basketball team and how they're playing?
It's incredible. I've thought I appreciated Paolo properly. Maybe not, or maybe we've just missed it so much, but he just makes everything so much easier for this team offensively. He raises the floor of everybody that's around him because he draws defenders. The opposing team is game planning for Paolo, so they are forgetting about everybody else. Then they're doubling Paolo. That opens things up for everybody else. And then Paolo has the ability to get those teammates involved. The 6 assists that he had last night, as big as anything else that he did. And he's an underrated defender. He had multiple steals and a block shot in his first game back. He had a block in that game against Philly in the win. I think just the ease, the texture in which he brings to the offense had no identity without him, and with him it has the identity is super identifiable in terms of how they want to be, the way that they want to play, and the way he's able to push the pace. One of the biggest differences, and something that I didn't notice the last couple of years with Paolo that really stands out like a sore thumb now, is when he collects a defensive rebound, his ability to turn, find a man, and throw the ball halfway across the court opens everything up. Even if that doesn't turn into a bucket, what you're doing is you're putting the defense against the Magic without Paolo was never playing like they were a step behind. He creates an uncomfortable situation for the opposing team in the way that he's able to, his vision, his intelligence, and then just his ability with his strength to pass the ball across the court. So those are some of the biggest things that I notice. And as he continues to get his wind back, his ability to attack the rack is going to be something that stands out as well.
And you can tell he's still figuring a few things out, right? Like last night he played 27 minutes and only got up 8 shot attempts, despite getting to the free throw line 11 times. But it's so there's still a little bit of things to figure out, and it's crazy. 27 minutes, 20 points, 8 rebounds, 6 assists, a block. He had some turnovers, but he still was a team high of plus 18. Flawed stat, we all know, but still I think it speaks volumes. Just how
highest plus minus in the game. Yeah.
Highest plus minus in the game. The next highest on the Magic alone was Corey Joseph, who played 16 minutes at plus 10. Also, shout out Corey Joseph for, being a contributor last night. Yet we needed every minute of him. But it's just insane. He's like opening things up so much. His gravity, just pulling in these defenders. He can pass it out to the open man who's getting a little bit better, cleaner looks from wherever they're taking their shots from, whether it's a drive or a shot from 3, they're getting cleaner opportunities. Now we need those shots to fall. We need those drives to be successful, but he's opening up space for so many people. And again, we have just a monster who's creating so much contact. I don't have the box score up for the Bucks game, but I know he got to the line a lot, maybe like 12 times. Last night versus the 76ers, he got to the line 11 times. It's just, I love that we have that back in our system right now. And
Yeah.
like you, I think I kind of forgot how good he was. Like he's I knew it was like, yeah, it's Paulo. He's awesome. He dropped 50 earlier this year, but then when you watch it again after him missing 34 games, it's like, oh yeah, this guy is like potential top 5 player in the league, in the future as he continues to get underneath his, his feet underneath his belt. Playoff threat for sure with what he's going to be able to do as he's grown in his game. It's just, 33 the first game, he comes back 20 the next. Like we'll see what he puts up the rest of the way, but it's just been so phenomenal. I know we're about to wrap up here in just a minute, but I want to look ahead a little bit. So to end this month, there are 8 games left this month. You have 2 on the road versus Milwaukee and Boston, then back at home versus Denver. That's kind of like that's kind of a gauntlet right there. 3 of the best teams in the league right now. Then the rest of the month kind of softens up a bit. You got at the road on Toronto, home games versus Portland and Detroit, then the start of their 6-game road trip that goes into February with the start at Miami and Portland. When you look at the rest of this month, what are you feeling? What feels good to you? What feels bad to you? There's an ESPN game there versus the Celtics, which is exciting. Tell me how you're feeling.
Yeah, I was told a couple of weeks ago, I looked up the remaining schedule ranking, the difficulty ranking, and the Magic were number 1 in terms of schedule difficulty. Am I wording this right?
Yes,
they were number 1 in terms of ease, the ease
easiest,
of which.
Yes.
And then you start getting into the schedule, and it's Minnesota and Milwaukee and Philly. It sometimes is a tough matchup. Sometimes they're not. Milwaukee, Boston, Denver. And I'm like, when is this thing lightening up? After that, it does lighten up quite a bit. So as long as you can handle that road swing, you should be just fine. Steal a win, 2, if we're being super optimistic, with the Milwaukee, Boston, Denver trio. And then you really need to start stacking wins after that. But when you consider Paolo's back, Suggs is going to be coming back soon, and then somewhere in that mix when you get into February, we're going to have Franz conversations as well. All of a sudden, you're starting to piece together and get hot at the right time. At least that's the way the schedule lines up. So as long as you're able to weather the next 3 games and the difficulty of going on the road for 6, it should be smooth sailing after that, as long as this team can stay healthy. But I feel pretty good moving forward.
I can't imagine they're going to get much worse, healthier, like injury-wise.
Don't put that out there. We don't know.
People are going to start calling me a jinx now. We'll see. Yeah, no, I feel the same. You want to see them get a win or 2 in the gauntlet of 3 with Milwaukee, Boston, Denver. And then they need to start, playing some basketball, stringing some wins together where they're, winning 3 out of 4 games, getting, a good little win streak going in there. We kind of need that because the separation is getting pretty tight in that 4th, 5th spot right now. The Magic have 23 wins. Currently today, the Pacers are in the 5th seed at 22 wins and 18 losses. Then you have the Bucks who have 20 wins, 17 losses. But right after that, you have the Heat and Pistons both have 20 wins. And then the Hawks are at 19 and the Bulls are at 18. So like there is some spacing there towards the end. Like I'm not really too worried about the Hawks and the Bulls, but and really even the Pistons, no disrespect, but the Pacers and Bucks, they're the Pacers on a 6-game winning streak. The Bucks, they've been kind of battling it out for 4th, 5th, like for the last couple of weeks now. So the Magic need to get back into stacking some wins and taking advantage of those softer teams, not softer, but the below 500 teams in my perspective. Brandon, it's always a joy to have you on the show. If people actually listen to the start of my show, they know I do an ad read for you every single day. So they should, for every single episode, they should know where to find you. But here's your opportunity for your live ad read right now.
Yes.
Let's go. Let everyone know where they can find you.
All right. The easiest way to do it is to just follow me on Twitter. I will update you constantly. At Brandon Kravitz, you can follow me there. Hey, if you want to become friends on Facebook, we could do that too. And I'll update you like I update my family and friends. Also on Instagram, at Brandon Kravitz, and on TikTok for however much longer that is in existence, at Brandon Kravitz there as well. I try and make it easy and uniform for all of you. And if you want to listen to me and you don't care about following me on social media, I totally get it. 3:30 during the Magic season. Starts at 3:30, my afternoon show on 96.9 The Game, and you can stream us live on the iHeartRadio app. Also, a weekly podcast called the Zoneheads Podcast, but I don't want to inundate your loyal listeners with too much information, so I'll cap it right there. Listen to the ad at the front of the show for the rest of the information.
That you'll find it there for sure. Brandon, I know we've tried to get this scheduled for a while, but either your schedule and my schedule doesn't line up, and like we're halfway through the season. We finally got it after like talking in preseason training. Dude, all right, let's make this happen. Yeah. 41 games later, here we are. Brandon,
tough. Schedule's tough.
Chat with you on, not just through texting and whatnot. It's nice to connect for a show. I'm sure we'll actually be able to do it again and not wait another 41 games soon. And make it happen a little bit later on in the season. Thanks so much for tuning into the show, everyone. Thanks again, Brandon. Magic play again on Wednesday versus the Milwaukee Bucks. Road trip game. Let's go, Magic. Peace.